general takeaways. Defense for the second straight week balled out again. Could not force a turnover like it did versus Wisconsin, but it was certainly not the reason this team lost. It kept them in the game at multiple points, even when it went down 10-0.
You looked at the offensive issues today. Were they similar to what they've been in past weeks, or did you see anything new?
I'd say so. I thought we saw, again, the predictability aspect is just kind of mind-boggling at times. Fourth down was a huge issue. I thought there were several fourth down play calls where you had fourth and short, fourth and medium, where it just didn't look like the play had a chance, or it was blown up by the Iowa defense, which is a solid, good defense in its own right. The offensive line, I think, today struggled more than it had in recent weeks. There were times where Aiden Smith had time to throw, but it wasn't consistent enough, and I thought Smith's decision-making was, again, just a little bit shaky, as he would get jittery in the pocket sometimes if someone wasn't immediately open. And the one time he really did have a chance to make a play to Riley Lees, he overthrew him by a yard or two, and that was really, really tough to see for a team that has struggled hitting plays over 15 yards.
The offensive line, for as poor as the offensive showing was not as bad. However, it's just the inability to take deep shots or just complete passes consistently is going to be a huge problem.
Eli, we'll start simple. What was your biggest takeaway from this game?
I mean, I guess you can't be surprised at the offense anymore. I was more surprised at just how quickly the defense broke. The defense has kind of eroded over the last few games. The 20-0 loss to Iowa, it wasn't a great defensive performance, but it kept them in the game for a while. It really got out of hand pretty quickly. Led by Michael Penix, this Hoosier offense was quite good early, and this bend don't break was really never in effect. It never made Indiana uncomfortable at all. The secondary was thrown all over. They were uncharacteristically undisciplined. There were 4 pass interference penalties in the end zone, especially a couple on third downs. They could have gotten off the field, forced 3s instead of 7s. Does that really matter with this offense? No, but it really just looked like for a team that we think is bottoming out every week, the defense really let the bottom fall out tonight.
Northwestern defense, we saw earlier in the season, was susceptible to poor tackling and giving up the big play, but usually they're going to make you earn it. Today, especially from early on, there was a 3rd and 10. Again, a 3rd and 10 situation. You want to get off the field. Nate Stanley fires a dart for what should have been a 15-yard reception and a first down. Troy Williams, coming back from injury, can't make the tackle. A couple more missed tackles, and it ends up to be a 50-yard touchdown. And that kind of just set the tone, because the defense was always just playing a little bit from behind. The run defense, first quarter, first half on early downs was great, but as the game wore on, they just got worn down a little bit in the trenches. No Trevor Kent, unsung defensive lineman who was out. Ernest Brown in the rotation, also out due to injury. It just seemed like the line got a little more worn down, and there were some gaping holes there in the second half that would easily be 5-yard runs, a couple of third down conversions on third and long runs. Similar thing to what we saw early against Ohio State. So I thought that was just an interesting thing to keep an eye on. With the chunk plays, obviously that 50-yard touchdown, a bit of an anomaly, but 2 other plays of 38 yards or more through the air. Otherwise, Nate Stanley only threw for 179 yards. You take out one of those plays, really a solid outing otherwise.
And we've seen this now for basically 3 straight weeks against 2 good defenses, and Nebraska isn't anything to write home about.
Absolutely.
And Northwestern made it look like Wisconsin's defense. Yeah. So it's a lack of, basically just a lack of scheme in general. And obviously you can attribute things to injuries. There were a lot of injuries Northwestern was fighting at today between
all offensive too.
Bowser and Slater and Johnson. So there's a lot of excuses you can make for this offense, but when it comes down to it, it's almost like the playbook and the overall game plan is not giving the big play a chance. He opened up pretty well, made a couple nice throws, but after that, just the play calling and the offense just gave him really nothing to work with. Couple drop balls. Again, Pat Fitzgerald said first and second down plays weren't getting enough, which made third downs really tough. So it ended up looking a lot like we saw from him early in the season up until Wisconsin. And obviously you can talk a lot about the play where he went down injured, because he was wrapped up and sacked and just kind of being dragged by a crowd of Hoosier defenders for 10 yards before he was really body slammed on the turf for no good reason. So you can complain about there not being a penalty on that, but they just never blew the play dead, which I think was the bigger issue, because that never would have happened regardless. Apart from Greg Newsome, made a couple great tackles, was very good in coverage, and dealing with the injury to Trey Williams. He stepped up in a big way. And we've talked about this defense being bend, don't break. It broke once, but it really didn't bend the rest of the game.
You looked at the first half of the schedule, and you're like, okay, maybe if they can tread water. They have not been able to.
Yeah.
But also, the back half of the schedule isn't necessarily looking like a cakewalk. Minnesota, a team that people might have tabbed as a sleeper coming in, is fully a ranked and undefeated team right now.
They're awake. They're absolutely awake.
They are an awake team. Indiana, again, we don't know how good they are really, but
Yeah.
they're a solid team, and right now...
We'll find out a lot this afternoon, actually. Indiana-Nebraska, I think, is going to be a telling game.
Yeah, those are two teams of similar caliber, I believe, and Northwestern went toe-to-toe with Nebraska, but couldn't pull that one out. Again, you said Purdue, they play Jekyll and Hyde seemingly every couple of weeks. We don't know what type of team we'll get from them, but what it comes down to is, does it really matter who's Northwestern's playing if they can't put up points? They have made average or below average defenses look incredible, and they have made incredible defenses look incredible as well. So, frankly, it's more of, as Fitz even said a couple of weeks ago, maybe even earlier this Monday at his press conference, it was almost like, what challenges does Iowa propose? And he's like, well, I wish I had more time to game plan for the opponent, because we're just working on getting our own stuff together right now. So it really seems like this team is fighting battles within, as opposed to really looking outward right now, and that's a big problem.
Ruiz kept Northwestern in the game on the shuffle pass that went to Wandale Robinson. He was going to the house until Ruiz tracked him down at the 17. If that play doesn't happen, Nebraska does not miss the ensuing field goal. That's a touchdown, and we might not even be having the conversation we're having right now.
You're still going to write about it, Eli. In these next 4 games, what's something you're looking for? What do you hope to see from the Cats besides just the obvious better production on the field?
I mean, clearly you always want to see something from the quarterback room. Interested to see what Hunter's injury status is going forward. Obviously, with the way that Northwestern discloses injuries, there's probably not much we're going to know. So you, of course, want to see production out of that room. But ultimately, by the way this season has gone, kind of just a bottoming out after a few good years, and you can make a case that these good years were because of Mick McCall, in spite of Mick McCall, however you want to make that. There's been a lot of noise around him this year with just his play calling and just the entire scheme of the offense. Pat Fitzgerald talked about them just being out-schemed at times today, and he said that in past press conferences too. So as bad as this might sound, I mean, Northwestern, to have a legitimate more case to fire Mick McCall, probably needs to almost lose out. It sounds bad because I want the best.
Maybe a UMass win.
Maybe a UMass win. But to get, Northwestern is technically still bowl eligible. If they were to win out, which is unlikely, but if they were to win out, 5-7, because they have a great graduation rate, if there were extra bowl spots to fill, they would get it. Now, unfortunately for the trajectory of this program to continue to get better, 5-7 does nothing for that. To represent a down year, sure, okay, but the season is already lost. It was lost a couple of weeks ago. So to drive real change, especially into the offense, because sure, the defense hasn't been great the last couple of weeks, but we all know that's not the problem with this program, especially on the coaching level. But there are serious concerns and questions on the offensive coaching staff, and so to drive real change, a 2-9, 2-10 season, that really drives questions, especially when the offense has produced 5 or 6 points a game in conference play. It's unacceptable. And of course you want the best for the seniors. You want them to win out, get a win over UMass, a win over Illinois, for the hat, just to send them out on top. That would be great. But for real long-term change, I feel like a couple more losses would drive them towards firing Mick McCall, as opposed to just kind of a mediocre season where they can keep him around a little longer. Because there are definitely cases to be made for this season wasn't all his fault. There are a lot of injuries, a lot of external factors that Mick McCall has had to deal with. I have to say, going into this game, I thought that Northwestern had the clear special teams battle. It was going to be a reason why I thought they might pull it out. And for a while, it looked like it might be. Charlie Kubander, what looked like an interesting angle for a 40-yarder, snuck it through, got Northwestern on the board. However, you can't miss a 35, 37-yarder and push it right. It looked awfully similar to the one he missed versus Stanford. Punting, again, a mixed bag. A lot of the success Northwestern had in the second and third quarter was due to the wind at their backs, especially with Daniel Kubiak's punts. I mean, both teams were dealing with the wind, but ultimately, Northwestern knew that the Nebraska special teams were not a strength. Pat Fitzgerald acknowledged that, and for a while it looked like that was going to play into their game plan. Ultimately, though, the Kubander missed kick, plus just the breakdown at the end, it wasn't good enough to put them over the edge.